So, the cultural group that I chose to do for this project is adults with mental disabilities, and I specifically looked at adults with autism. So, the characteristics that are significant to this group are the social, behavioral, and communication challenges. Autism spectrum disorder, or ASD, is a developmental disability that affects the ability of a person to communicate and is often combined with restrictive, repetitive behaviors or interests such as motor movements, ritualized routines, and hyper or hyporeactivity to their environment. Signs of ASD are usually seen throughout early childhood and typically last throughout their lifetime. These signs can include avoiding eye contact, repeating actions, and trouble expressing emotions. Currently, there is no cure for ASD, but research shows that early treatment services can improve a child's development. There are different levels of severity of ASD. Level 1 is high functioning. It's often referred to as Asperger's syndrome. People at this level have difficulty in initiating social interactions, and find it difficult when others interrupt their daily rituals. Level 2 requires substantial support and is marked by deficits in verbal and nonverbal communication skills. Level 3 is the most severe. It requires a lot of support and is often combined with other disorders such as epilepsy or genetic or metabolic syndromes. One main value that is common theme amongst adults with ASD is the importance of creating a normalistic lifestyle and creating independency. Such lifestyle includes access to good medical care, appropriate educational placement, employment, successful relationships, and access to recreational activities. One strategies that families have taken to create independency is getting involved in a program that provides meaningful activities that will increase their quality of life. These types of programs and activities can be highly beneficial in helping adults increase their independence and quality of life. Since individuals with ASD struggle understanding social situations, they often do not understand how to respond appropriately with others. Sometimes their odd behaviors and poor social skills can come off as rude and can cause others to become frustrated with them. They often experience being ridiculed, rejected, and ignored. They can experience emotional distress, anxiety, and depression. They have trouble expressing empathy. These individuals need a strong support system in order to create independency. A great resource that I found was a book called Adults with Autism Stories and Advice for the Next Generation. This book had a lot of successful stories in it of adults growing up with autism and becoming successful. One story that I found really interesting was told from the viewpoint of a sister of a brother whose brother is autistic. He grew up loving art and loving to draw, and he actually shares his art in a gallery that is specific to people with mental and physical disabilities, and he's very successful at it. So I thought that was a cool read. Some key historical events and figures. So we've got Eugene Giller. Um, he the term autism stems from the diagnosis of schizophrenia, and he was the one who first copied it. The label was mainly given to adults until the 1930s, and then it began to be diagnosed in children. Howard Potter was the first North American psychiatrist to diagnose schizophrenia in children. The patient's symptoms would appear in the first decade of their lives and include withdrawal of interest, autistic feeling of thinking, odd actions, and possible regression a decade later. Then we've got Louise Despert. Um, he echoed Potter's accusation that a schizophrenic mother caused childhood schizophrenia. These kinds of mothers were described as overprotective, overaggressive, indulgent, and neurotic. From this point on, parents and in particular mothers got a bad rap for producing mentally ill individuals. Leo Kanner is the next figure that is often known as the father of autism. He led a study in hopes of bridging the gap between pediatricians and psychiatrists. He claimed that his patient presented such unusual behavior that he needed his own diagnosis. His patient preferred to be alone and would throw tantrums when others would interfere with his activities. These two symptoms would become Kanner's features of autism. He too was focused on the coldness of the parents to be the reason their kids had autism. And it was not until Bernard Rimland's work in 1964 that this hypothesis would be questioned. He led extensive research on autism symptoms, causes, and spread awareness. He looked at genetic factors, the brain stem. He looked at dietary and nutritional treatments, behavior modifications. He was even consulted for the movie Rain Man, which became the best known representation of adults with autism on film. So he's probably the most influential to modern day autism. So, some historical background. Um, Authors have gone as far to say that people with severe mental disabilities are among the top victims next to African Americans and Native Americans as far as oppression goes. In 1942, the American Journal of Psychiatry said, and I quote, that kids reaching the age of 5 who show that they are feeble minded should be euthanized so that they could be spared the agony of living, end quote. This is a very bold and sad statement, but unfortunately, that is how this population was looked at back in the day. They felt like there was not a bright future for them and felt like they needed to be separated from the general population. They were stripped from their basic human rights and sent to inhumane mental institutions with no prior medical exam. There was overcrowding, abuse. They were tortured with experimental medical procedures that often left them maimed um, or even killed. During the 1930s and well into the 1960s, doctors were convinced that lobotomies were the answer to curing psychosis and depression. Um, Today, even though stigma surrounding mental health is better, um, people with mental disabilities still experience oppression in society. And a recent study found that people with mental disabilities lack access to routine health care. They also have a hard time finding healthcare providers that are able and willing to see them. This fact leads this population to be more at more risk for health related issues. There have been some mainstream health promotion programs that have been more successful because they involve the family members and caretakers, but the success of these programs still needs to be looked at long term. So I got to volunteer at a local autism program for adults. It's called the Stables at Pasadena Villas. I spent 2 days of the total of 8 to probably like 12-ish hours volunteering and serving the residents of the facility. I got to participate in a group meeting on budgeting and how to balance a checkbook. I also got to stay for a morning group meeting where they got to talk about their moods for the day. And then I got to participate in an animal assisted therapy session or AAT. It was interesting with the budgeting meeting. It I didn't really it didn't dawn on me until that meeting that these guys probably never didn't know what a budget was, knew the importance of it because they don't have that level of independency at home. So that was interesting for me to recognize, for me to see, for me to learn how we can bridge that gap and have them learn that important skill. During the morning group, they were all very, very honest about their moods for the day. One guy got very overstimulated during his morning yoga session. So he was very blunt in saying he didn't know how he was going to do the rest of the day, but he was going to try his hardest. So that was great. He was very aware. And then during the animal assisted therapy, I really got to interact with them. The therapist that usually runs it wasn't there, so it's kind of in my advantage that I got to be shown around to all the different animals by the different residents, and I got to really sit down and talk with them about their diagnosis and how they felt, and kind of interview them from there. Key things that I learned was the importance of keeping to a schedule. So most of them, in order for them to feel safe and in control, they do have to keep to a schedule. Even one of them, he is diagnosed with schizophrenia, so he loses track of time, and so he sets alarms for himself to let him know when the next activity it's time for. And so all the technicians were like, "I really appreciate him actually because he keeps us all on track." And then the next important thing was the importance of meeting a resident where they're at, like developmentally and socially. Um, I think it's so important to understand the person and tailor their treatment plan to them rather than just their diagnosis. And I think that can go be generalized throughout the whole entire mental health field, no matter what types of people that you're working with. As if you tailor your approach to that individual in long term, it will help them be able to get to where they want to be. And the last thing that I really found interesting was how animals can aid in treatment. I have a long passion with animals. I know that animals help me when I'm stressed and anxious, and it was really cool to see that come to work. There was a girl who hadn't been sleeping very well, and she spent time with her favorite bunny Cloud, and after that she felt like she could conquer the world, and that was really fun. So I did get to interview both the director and several of the residents. So the mission statement of the stables is helping residents build a level of independency that is appropriate and feasible. They do this by providing life skills and improve quality of life through AAT, social outings, and different groups to help them learn different life, social, and communication skills. So there are different factors that that are involved, that determines their graduation from the program. That is, they get their treatment plan. How are they doing on that? What is their family's goals? Where are they going after this? Can their family financially support them in this program? And obviously, they consult with the therapist that's on board, the psychiatrist, all the different people that are involved in all the group meetings. As to deem when they graduate or whatever. Compliance is also an issue. If a resident is not being compliant, then obviously they're not a fit for the program. If they stay in the program, they can hinder others, so they're usually moved on. There is a really high demand right now for programs like this, so they really need a staff that is able to be flexible, that is able to represent the program in the right way, that is able to create an environment that is healing and is light and it's fun. So that's very important to them. Um, Probably the organization, Pasadenaville, does a lot to advocate, in the state, but the Stables program itself doesn't do a whole lot. And then the last question is probably the most important. What's the most significant thing that an outsider needs to better understand this population? Is they need to treat them with dignity and respect and have an open line of communication with them, and to recognize that recognizing the individuals instead of focusing on the diagnosis. So in talking with the residents, so they were diagnosed between the ages of 6 and 15. School was involved in helping with the diagnosis. One person said that they remember the first memory of them being different was being put in speech therapy class. Multiple, multiple residents said that they do have a memory of being put down because they were different, but they choose not to focus on that, those thoughts and those feelings and memories. They do feel like that they have a great support system at home, which is awesome. They said anxiety, depression, suicide ideation, losing track of time, OCD, etc. are the things that they struggle with. One of their goals is they want to become more independent and create a sense of normalcy outside of the program. All said that this program is super helpful to them, and they love that they get to be roommates with each other and get to work on their socialization in real time, as they're learning their skills. And then above all, they want other people to realize that they are not dumb, that they are very intelligent, and they want to be treated as such. In some practical application, I feel like the social learning theory and cognitive behavioral theory are the two theories, um, that are empirically validated as effective with adults with mental disabilities, specifically autism. So, social learning theory is people learn from imitating others. Um, this behavior theory also encompasses attention, memory, and motivation. The reason this theory is effective is that it helps explain the meditational processes that a person goes through when they are learning how to behave. People with autism have trouble with these processes and need assistance from therapists to help them learn which behaviors are appropriate. Cognitive behavioral therapy helps patients recognize their own thoughts, expectations, and attitudes in order to change false and negative beliefs. During therapy, a counselor can help break down a specific trauma or social scenario in order to help the client understand the different dynamics that are at play. The reason this theory is so effective is because it helps individuals with autism understand their own emotions and better place the appropriate behaviors to those emotions. Um, so I guess in conclusion, um, the population that deals with mental disabilities, especially autism, is not completely understood. Science has yet to explain why this illness happens. There is not a cure. This minority requires help as the individuals progress throughout their lifetime. When an individual reaches adulthood, they are often not equipped with the tools and skills they need to live independently. And it's important that programs like the Stables does exist to help families and individuals progress and gain their independence. The most important thing that I learned completing this project is that these individuals are more than just their diagnosis. They are smart, well rounded individuals with their own opinions and should be treated with dignity and respect. I believe that everyone struggles in life, and we can decide to keep um, devaluing individuals, and gain nothing, or we can help these individuals flourish and gain wonderful members of society. So that is my presentation and my project. These are my sources. I hope you have enjoyed this presentation. Thanks.